The 10th ranked Miami Hurricanes lose 26-20 in overtime at SMU. Highly disappointing result for the Hurricanes, who did not have much room for error after their loss to Louisville 2 weeks ago. They dropped to 6-2 overall in the season, 2-2 in the ACC, making it extremely unlikely Miami will make it to the ACC championship game in year 4 for Mario Cristobal. Slim playoff hopes remain, but Miami has to win the rest of their games, hope for other things. And I want to start with this reaction video with more of a big picture feel, because that's where a lot of my thoughts are going right now. I'll talk more about the game later and kind of my thoughts on how things went, but just it's a huge missed opportunity for Coach Cristobal, and really there's a lot of blame to go around. Look, the offense needed to perform better, the defense didn't get the stops at the end of the game, the penalties, all these things, whether you want to blame, the philosophies of the offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator and Heatherman, and with Dawson on the offensive side. But to me, I think this all goes to Mario Cristobal and his shortcomings in big games, and obviously this time of year. Calendar turns to November, Mario loses a game. This is what has been happening at Miami for Cristobal's Hurricanes, dropping to 4-11 in games in November and December. This is a team that built up a lot of positivity at the beginning of the season with those big wins, Notre Dame, the blowout win against USF, ranked at that time, and obviously the win over Florida and Florida State. So Miami had built that 5-0 record and looked good, rising to number 2 in the country. It felt like a solid team. This is a team that Coach Cristobal and his staff, the way I looked at it, they feel like they've got a better defense than a year ago. So if they can just have a solid offense, eliminate the penalties, eliminate the mistakes, and really kind of rely on the offensive line and their run game, and kind of just make plays and call on Carson Beck when needed. And that's kind of what we've seen with their success. We're not seeing the high point totals too often with this team offensively. And that's why I felt like going into this game, that's what I thought was going to happen. A tough SMU team coming off a loss. They had not lost in ACC play in 2 years in their regular season. This is a very well-coached team with Rhett Lashley and his staff there, a team that's used to winning a lot of games. And I just thought this was going to be a difficult game for Miami. It certainly was. And Coach Cristobal needed to have his team in better position to really handle this road environment. They're 10-10 under Coach Cristobal in his 4th season here away from home. It is much different in college football playing away from home. And you saw it today also with the penalties. We've been talking about penalties really since Cristobal's been coaching at Miami, just not good enough. And today it was awful. And it really cost him. Literally, it cost him the game based on that penalty by Marquise Lightfoot there on that final drive of regulation, extended drive. Miami did face some good situations in terms of their defense with where they were at, some 3rd and longs, and made SMU put them in a really difficult position. Very favorable for Miami, but that Lightfoot play can't happen in that situation. Coach Cristobal's response after the game, I didn't think was good enough. I didn't like his response, essentially blaming the official for that. It comes down to Lightfoot. He cannot hit the quarterback like that, and everyone knew that he held up. We saw Jennings held up. You can't commit a penalty at that point in the game. But the penalty by Marquise was not the only one in the game. Far from it. Miami had 12 penalties in this game, and 9 of them came on the offensive side of the ball. Very disappointing to see that result, especially with how those penalties were affecting drives and really affecting a lot of different things. And look, with Coach Cristobal, does not have the background as an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. He's a CEO, head coach type. But with that, his background, everyone knows with the offensive line, and you're expecting a good offensive line from them, a good unit. And we've seen that throughout the year. This team does have a good offensive line. I think we can all agree. Now, to what level, there's certain degrees that we can discuss that, but it has a good offensive line. And when what you saw today was extremely disappointing from the offensive line. Of those 9 penalties, many on the offensive line. In fact, all 6 of their top offensive linemen, their 5 starters, and then kind of getting Sampson in there, their top 6 guys, every one of them accounted for a penalty today. Highly disappointing from a group that, again, expected to lead the way, that they really want to lean on this offensive line, and a lot of guys that are experienced. This isn't a young group. It's a highly experienced group, and the penalties were far too much. And the procedure stuff, It just can't happen in games like this. Miami is playing for high stakes here. These are games where a lot is on the line. They're trying to get to Charlotte in the ACC title game. They're trying to have their first college football playoff berth under Coach Cristobal. And these games, playing on the road, all these things need to be buttoned up, and it certainly wasn't. And to see that Lightfoot penalty on the defensive side of the ball, and the defense had 3 penalties of its own, highly disappointing from that standpoint of a team that just couldn't grasp what was at stake in terms of all these things. There's a lot of other things that go into a football game in terms of playing well and getting productive yards and touchdowns and all these things, but a lot of this stuff is just highly disappointing to see, again, from a team that is supposed to be turning the corner. And we'll see what this team does moving forward the rest of the season. As I mentioned earlier, it's a huge uphill climb to get, to accomplish one of these goals, to be one of the top 2 teams in the ACC, or to get to the football playoff there. And it just doesn't look like either one of those is going to happen, because this doesn't look like a team, the way that they're playing, that they're going to win out, dropping to 2-2 to start ACC play. There are many teams ahead of them. You saw Duke earlier in the day, a team with 1 loss, and they kind of go for 2 and win this big game at Clemson. Miami's facing an uphill battle with a lot of these teams and just going to run into it. This was one of the few games Miami had to play on its schedule against a team that was ahead of them in the ACC standing. So overall, just highly disappointing with the result and how it happened. And just, again, it's with Coach Cristobal, you're expecting things to turn the corner, and they have not, to the point that you're expecting it to. And I understand why everyone is so disappointed watching this team play. So let's talk about the game in particular. Let's start with the offensive side of the ball. Carson Beck essentially ends the game with his interception there in overtime on a 3rd down play, and they're inside the 10, and you're thinking that if you're going to put the ball in his hands, and you're certainly hoping he doesn't make a mistake, because you've got to get some points in there. Going to Malachi Toney on that play, and just an interception. Just whether Malachi should have stayed flat or kind of run the line there, that's hard to say, and certainly they're just, both of them saw it differently, and that's just what happened. But the offense was certainly relying on Malachi today, and I think it affected him in kind of not a positive way. Yes, Malachi 9 catches, but he only had 70 yards, and under 8 yards a catch. You would have liked to have seen to be able to get him out a little bit more down the field a little bit. A lot of short throws and going to him there, trying to get him the ball in his hands quickly. You understand it and why they're doing it. I just felt like it kind of limited them, as an offense throughout the game. And I think they've got to be able to get the ball downfield a little bit more. They did push it a little bit. We did see JoJo Trader out there today making catches. Finally, I know everybody's been wondering where he's at. Why is he not playing? Why is he not in there? CJ Daniels is injured, out, doesn't play today. Trader steps in, and we saw him make plays early on. Looked good, had a nice catch, and then he had that nice touchdown catch, which is contested catches is what we kind of have grown to expect and from JoJo and what we've seen, what I've seen. So it wasn't a surprise there. So really good by him. And then that very disappointing play there where he had a drop and it kind of results in an interception there. And then the very next play, the defense gives up a long touchdown. That was disappointing that the defense was out of sorts there and just couldn't kind of, respond off of that. But offensively, Trader obviously can't drop the ball there. But really just disappointing that they didn't keep him more involved. But it's more of the same. Expecting Trader to JoJo to be out there and have a great game, I think was going to be a little overly optimistic because he's not been used throughout the year. It's hard to just put a player in and expect the best out of him. And I can only imagine what JoJo, whether it was his confidence or what he needed to do. I was actually a little bit surprised that he made such a big play, even though I believe in him and think he could be a good player. But to be able to do that, but again, it kind of comes with mixed results, obviously, with the interception. So he wasn't very active wasn't really active in the passing game after that. They kind of had other guys, and so we'll see how the passing game kind of goes from here. But CJ Daniels not in there. It gives the opportunity to JoJo, and a little bit mixed results, but hopefully we'll see if JoJo can kind of stay in the mix there. Defensively, it's a little hard to judge. Again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, blame can go all the way around, and with a loss like this, I thought the defense in its moments wasn't good enough. Now, if we talk about the positives, only allowed 3 conversions there on 3rd down, 3 for 13, and SMU also did not convert on their 4th down, and went over 40 minutes without converting on 3rd down, so that's a positive. The run defense only allowing the 23 yards there, obviously a positive. However, negatively, giving up a career high to Kevin Jennings, 365 passing yards, obviously not good. And then in those key moments, couldn't get the key stop. Miami's had 20-17 in the 4th quarter. Defense needed a stop. SMU's backed up, starting their drive with no timeouts, just over the 2-minute mark, and allowed a big catch, allowed some 3rd down stuff, some big catches, and it led to SMU, especially on that last catch there. They get an extra 11, and it shortens the field goal opportunity, and they tie it at the end of regulation. Defense just didn't make the plays it needed to there. And I touched on earlier with the Lightfoot penalty, obviously was a huge part of that drive. And then in overtime, look, Miami didn't score any points, and it's hard to win a game and extend the game, but the defense needed to do something. You would have at least liked to have seen them provide some sort of resistance in overtime to force a field goal opportunity. And that's what needed to happen. That's not what happened. SMU chunked it away all the way down and punched it in the end zone. So disappointing ending by the defense, which was solid at times throughout the game, but just not good enough. And this was a defense that was allowing under 15 points a game. So to allow the 26, that wasn't good to see. And the offense, again, on the road, both of these units just needed to play better. Again, whether you want to blame the offense more or the defense, however you process the game, I just think both groups, both units needed to be better, in addition to all the other things that I mentioned earlier. Discuss a lot about the game, because a lot of my thoughts really, again, as I mentioned, just have to do with the big picture of what this loss means to the season. And again, this is year 4 for Cristobal, and you're hoping things turn the corner, the high expectations as the season's going on, and you are seeing some positive things. You are getting positive results against teams you feel good about, but it takes the whole season, and we'll see how the final 4 games of the regular season go. And maybe Miami can sneak in somehow. You can kind of get to that 10th win. Miami, maybe that's the thing. Miami hasn't had consecutive 10-win seasons since that 02-03 sequence there. They could do that this year, so maybe that would be a small consolation, even with these disappointing losses in 2 of the last 3 games. But they've got to get things corrected, or they will lose again. They don't have a team. I don't think they have a team on the schedule, the caliber of an SMU or Louisville in the ACC, with Syracuse, NC State, Virginia Tech, and Pitt coming up. But Pitt, I've been paying attention to them. Pitt's been piling up some wins here, with their quarterback situation in that last game right after Thanksgiving, that final weekend regular season for ACC play. That could be a tough test as it builds. But look, Miami is going to have to play better and improve and somehow put some things together and really just hope for the best. And so I know Cristobal said that, and the players are looking forward to kind of just, doing their best to move past it. But we'll see. Again, this team's got to get better. They've got to show improvements. Just highly disappointing all the way around for so many different reasons. And it just didn't work in their favor at all. And that's kind of just where I'm going to wrap this up. Definitely drop in the comments below. How'd you process the game as it was going on, offensively and defensively? But also, too, big picture-wise, what do you think? What do you think about this season? What do you think about here, year 4 with Cristobal, with where this program is right now, and your thoughts there? Definitely share in the comments below. But I want to thank everybody for watching. I definitely understand the difficulties and disappointments that everybody has in this loss. I definitely understand why, absolutely, with what you're expecting from this program, from this team, from this season. So thanks again for watching. Have a good rest of the weekend. I'll definitely provide more comments as things move along here, as Miami gets ready for its next game. But have a good rest of the day, and take care.